Hello everyone, welcome to Study 101. Today we'll be doing With the Mind is Without Fear by Rabindranath Tagore. This is his one of the most vastly read and discussed poems. Now, about Rabindranath Tagore. He was a Bengali polymath poet, a writer, a composer, philosopher and a painter. He was the first Asian recipient for the Literature Award in 1913. Gitanjali, a collection of poetry, was one of the most famous works by Rabindranath Tagore, published in India in 1910. Now, let's look about some things about the poem. So, Where the Mind is Without Fear by Rabindranath Tagore is one of his vastly read and discussed poems. It was originally composed in Bengali, possibly in the 1900s under the title Prathna, that means prayer. It appeared in the new volume called Nabidia in 1901. Later in 1911, Tagore himself translated this Bengali poem into English, and that translation appeared as poem 35 in his Nobel-winning anthology Gitanjali, that literally means of song offerings, published by the Indian Society, London in 1912. So when this poem was written, India was under the British rule or the colonial rule. Now, people were eagerly waiting to get their freedom from the British rule. This poem is written in the form of a prayer to God, the Almighty, for a true freedom of his country, and thus Tagore reveals his own concept of freedom throughout the poem, where the mind is without fear. Now let's go through the line by line explanation for this poem. Where the mind is without fear and head is held high. Following in the very first line, the poet prays to Almighty that his countrymen should be free from any fear or oppression or forced compulsion. He wishes that everyone in his country has his head held high in dignity. In other words, according to him, in a truly free country, every person should be fearless and have a sense of self-dignity. Following line 2, where the knowledge is free. In the second line, the poet dreams of a nation where knowledge would be free. Education should not be restricted to the upper class only, but everybody should be allowed to acquire knowledge. Not only that, the children should learn freely from nature and the world around them. They should not be forced to memorize some predetermined lessons, and this is Tagore's typical concept of education. Where the world has not been broken up into fragments by narrow domestic walls. In the next two lines, the poet emphasizes on the unity of not only his countrymen but the entire world. He thinks that there should be no division among people based on their caste, creed, color, religion, or other baseless beliefs. In other words, prejudice and superstitions should not divide the people in groups and break their unity. Where the words come out from the depth of truth. In line 5, the poet wants a nation where people are truthful. They should not be superficial and words should come out from the depth of their hearts. It can be also suggested that under this utopian country, people would not be oppressed or forced to lie or become corrupt. In line 7, the poet says that where the clear stream of reason has not lost its way into the dreary desert sand of dead habits. In this line, the poet wants his countrymen to be progressive and broad-minded. He wants that their minds are led forward to ever-widening thought and action by the Almighty. In short, we should be open-minded and do something unusual or extraordinary, overcoming the narrowness of mind. Into that heaven of freedom, my Father, let my country awake. In the final line of the poem, the poet addresses God as Father. He asks him to awaken his country into such a heaven of freedom where the above conditions meet. To make it clear, the poet prays to Almighty, or referred to as his Father, to raise or lift as in to awake his countrymen or his country to such heights where freedom would be realized at its best. In turn, he's actually praying to God that God awakens his countrymen so that they come out from the darkness of ignorance, prejudice, and disunity. Where the mind is without fear is a pre independent poem in which the poet sincerely urges God to awake his fellow beings for the realization that the essential need to live in a free and united country. He wants his countrymen to be awake and enjoy the life full of dignity and honor. His countrymen would not be superstitious or believers of blind faith, rather than they would lead a life of enlightenment and education. He wishes the people to be honest, open minded, and industrious. Then only they would stretch their arms toward perfection, and the nation could actually achieve the apex of success. Now, coming to the conclusion for this poem talks about what Tagore wants a utopian nation to be. What Tagore wants the future nation to be. It is up to us in the future that we fulfill his wishes. We fulfill what he had imagined. This poem talks about that. This poem talks about removing all the caste prejudices, baseless beliefs, superstitions that do not have any moral support or do not mean anything morally. He wants that education should be free, education should be available to all. That's Tagore's typical concept of education. Herein, in 1901, a Tagore opened Shanti Niketan, where children could express themselves freely. It was a school or an open surrounding 100 kilometers away from Calcutta, where children could learn in nature. That was Tagore's typical concept of education. Tagore wants that people should be practical about things. People should know the scientific reason for things and not go over some baseless beliefs. Like people say that do not cross a black cat. How can this refer to a scientific reason? Tagore wants people to be optimistic, people to think good. Then only the nation can progress. That this was about this poem, Where the Mind is Without Fear. I hope you enjoy this lesson. If you have any doubts, tell me in the comment section. I'll be happy to answer them. In the next lesson, I'll be covering the figurative language for this poem. Thank you till then. Do subscribe, like this, share, and video. Bye.